So agenda, we're going to talk about why this talk. What is threat? Do we need to do anything with the, I know I'm looking at you because he's still trying to learn it.
No, it's streaming.
Okay.
We've been streaming the whole time.
Just streaming. Oh, no. So why this talk? What is threat modeling? Basics of threat modeling, methodologies and approaches, tools and resources. Again, we'll get into the demo with the whiteboard here. I have 3 different tools. I'll let you guys pick which one we want to go through. Or if you have an actual thing that you want, well, I guess we can. It's recorded. Best practices and tips, and then we'll kind of wrap up there. So why this talk? I've done 6 other different topics before. Well, a lot of them focus on application security, some of them working with development teams, a variety of stuff. And the thing that kept coming up in each one of those talks was threat modeling. So I was like, I need to do just a threat modeling talk. And these are really, I will tell you, have really refreshed my memory on it. It's low cost, it's easy to implement, and it provides a tremendous amount of value. Because one thing it does is it gets a lot of people on the same page. I have walked into with developers, and they we started talking about it, and one of the first things you do is you talk about your profile, your scope. And one of the developers said, "Oh, I thought we were doing this in the cloud." And it's like, no, we're doing this in our data center. Like, that is a big difference in how you're building out that application. So it's done a really good, especially if you're doing it early on, it does a really good job of getting everybody on the same page. So that's where a lot of management, even outside of security, is like, there's a lot of value in this. And so with that, it also streamlines security into the development process. We talk about shift left, right? Moving the tooling as far left. And it's, you can't go any farther left than a developer's head, right? As they're coding, that's the farthest left. And there's not really a tool yet you can put in their brain to go, hey, security. And it also does a really good job of building a security mindset. If people talk about a security culture with an organization, threat modeling does a really good job of that because it allows people to exercise their security mindset. Because a lot of people in organizations aren't security focused. They're more focused on building. Right, security, we're just the people that come over. We're the kid that after a kid builds a sandcastle, we come over and kick it over and go, yeah, see, you had a structural problem there with that, that part of the castle. That's why it fell over, right? That's essentially what security people are doing. So it's really getting people to think about that kind of stuff. And it's become more of a thing, especially in like the privacy sector. That's become like GDPR, other stuff. Healthcare companies, the last couple of years have gotten in trouble for having Google Analytics on their provider login pages. So you can think why that's an issue, right? Is someone's logging in to, check some medical stuff. You're not supposed to know they're there, but Google Analytics captured that information, shoots it off to Google, and now you have, and so a lot of healthcare companies have gotten sued because of that. Healthcare threat modeling can help with thinking through some of that kind of stuff. Now that's sometimes just marketing going off and doing stuff, but some of the other events that have happened. Anybody remember NotPetya? When that occurred, that was 2017, a big ransomware event. That was when Russia essentially sent malware to Ukraine. Like, they were trying to attack via a software called MEDoc. It's used for tax account software. It looked like ransomware because it wanted a payment, but what it really did was just wipe the computer. So it overwrote the master boot record. And pretty much hosed the machine. So there was no recovery anyways. But what happened there is it propagated over to the US because there's US-based companies in Ukraine. And so they were impacted by it, and it exploited the Eternal Blue vulnerability. So it hit companies on a global scale. Threat modeling in this scenario could help you make sure you have proper network segmentation between countries so that if there is a war that happens, right, and people are launching malware all over the place, there's not like a collateral damage there. SolarWinds, who remembers SolarWinds? That was a fun one, right? Software managing and monitoring network software. It was discovered which is another probably thing I think I was reading, it came out in like 2000, so it's probably got a bunch of technical debt. It discovered in December 2020, attackers infiltrated the build process and inserted malicious code into updates. So people were getting updates from SolarWinds that had malicious code in it. And they also had very advanced stealth techniques of not being caught. This impacted 18,000 customers were compromised. This is where threat modeling, again, I talk to people about, we can do basic threat modeling, but then also you want to think about the mission impossible style, what happens if this scenario occurs, right? Ukraine, people getting into our development process and updating malicious code, because this isn't the first time that's happened now. So a lot of development and security teams, if they're working with developers, should be thinking about what happens if someone, or even just a disgruntled employee, puts some malicious code, or some intern comes in and puts the wrong thing in, right? How can that have a catastrophic effect? And in fact, the attackers had a threat model, because if you really dug into the code, they dug into the code, that code would shut down if there was certain security tooling installed on those machines. So it wouldn't even run. So they had their own threat model. That's what allowed them to evade detection a lot, was they had certain tooling that they knew would probably catch them. And so they just said, don't even run, right? So that's they had their own threat model. The bad guys are doing threat model, we should do it. And thus begun the buzzword for SBOM, by the way. 23andMe, this is a more recent thing. This happened this past fall. 23andMe is a consumer genetics and research company. So they analyze DNA from saliva samples that then provide ancestry reports to people. They had a credential stuffing attack happen on their website that compromised 14,000 accounts. But due to sharing permissions, the total number of people compromised was like 6.9 million people. So yeah, so that's huge, right? And we just talked about authorization, or not. Authorization problems, right? Which was sharing and stuff. Essentially what had happened was, if you shared something with somebody, it became available to a lot more people. And attackers, when they get in these environments now, they will scan and just start scraping everything down, right?
Well, sharing DNA.
Yeah.
I guess that's a good thing I did catch that Christmas present 5 years ago. Use it, still sitting on my dresser.
There you go.
Yep, exactly. But so threat modeling there, right? You can talk about credential stuffing, right? You can talk about putting MFA in. You can talk about how do we identify credential stuffing in the first place. And sometimes too, like, it's a lot of automated stuff, so it's actually very visible. You can just automatically, like, AWS WAF will set up that if something's hitting your website too much, it'll just automatically block that. A lot of tooling will do that nowadays. And then also you can talk about sharing permissions, like, what if someone sees something else? There's a lot of stuff in the healthcare, and I find this all the time, because scanners don't pick this up. When I go and change the number on a URL and I get somebody else's profile, like, that's a authorization issue that needs to be addressed. So that's definitely something we can talk about. So what is threat modeling? Simply, it's like discussing a design. It's essentially having a data flow discussion. In fact, I have often just named it a data flow discussion. I never even called it threat modeling, because I wanted it to be more, I guess, friendly or user friendly, or visually, people weren't coming in expecting the security thing, because as I said, there was a lot of other outside benefits. It wasn't just a security thing. It was understanding what we're building, or in certain cases, what do we have here that no one's touched in a while. So this, I'm not gonna read this. I'm gonna take a drink actually. But you can see here, this is what ChatGPT has to say about it. If it's still a little bit more confusing, but it's essentially analyzing an application or business process too. It doesn't have to just be applications. Talk about process.
Yeah, depending on your audience, I like the idea of looking at it more like data flow, just to not scare them off. But
it is far more useful to tell people that you're building a model of a system to help security people understand all the pieces and parts to secure it than it is to say we're going to identify all the threats to your application.
so we're doing a security audit.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the first things I ask too when we pick something to do, is like, do you have a diagram for it? 80% of the time it's nope, we don't have a diagram. So now
Now
you're
they
actually,
do have one. It's a diagram they built when they were designing the application, and you just walk off.
yeah. So it's yeah. So you like, it does a lot of different things. That's why I'm saying you're getting a lot of value out of doing this. And again, all you need to start is a whiteboard and some markers, right? And we'll get into some of the tooling, but this is also something we do like on a day-to-day basis. If you're planning a kid's birthday party, you're thinking about what can go wrong, right? If you're planning a trip somewhere, right? What are some of the things? Do we need to buy insurance for the flight? One of the examples I've always given is driving. When I'm driving from point A to point B, when I'm on the road, I am going, okay, what happens if this truck or this car comes over to my lane? Am I gonna, is there someone behind me that I can slam on my brakes, or can I get over to the left lane? Like, this is just driving to work can be a form of threat modeling, just to make sure that you get from point A to point B, right? So you avoid an accident. And, you know, people that get into accidents probably don't think about that kind of stuff a whole lot, or they just throw the threat model to the wind. So essentially, it's a step-by-step process for identifying risk. Another benefit is you're catching a lot of the bugs early on especially when you're designing something, right? And this is a chart of, you know, the cost of a bug as it gets farther away from the development all the way to after release. You can see how much more expensive it is. So if you can find these things early on in the design process, it's going to be much cheaper, right? This is your pitch to executive level leadership, because one of the things you will find is when you're and developers too, right? You need buy-in from a lot of leadership to make sure you're doing this stuff. So the developers and sometimes other groups, you might need networking, you might need infrastructure, you might need different parts, and that can be in a very expensive meeting. And that's probably the biggest cost, is that meeting. But I will tell you, I've been in plenty of other meetings. People set up meetings all the time that are just money waste. This actually adds some sort of value. And like I said, it gets everyone on the same page. And how many of you feel like this when you're evaluating a legacy application or an application from an M&A activity? So threat modeling is the answer. You don't need to panic. It's really good at discovery. Like, so a lot of people talk about it early on in the design. If you're looking at something that you know nothing about, right? Some developer's been maintaining this legacy application and they just know how to maintain it. And it's been built by like 3 different development groups that came over the last 10 years. So it's got a mishmash code. This is a great opportunity to go through that with threat modeling, because the threat modeling is going to have questions pop up that then needs to go be discovered. And it might need having multiple sessions to really understand what the application is doing. Also, what security things do we need to get in place? What controls do we need to start putting in place so that it actually gets in a much better secure state? And I've used it for this kind of stuff. Like I said, I've expanded outside of development into IT projects, and I was part of a merger and acquisition, and we used this a lot to better understand how. And it wasn't even just, we did this for thermometers within fridges, and it was a healthcare company, and they were handling COVID vaccines. And if vaccines go above or below a certain, or I think they get too hot, right, then you have to throw them out. There's certain requirements for throwing that kind of stuff out. So I was like, oh, a 20 minutes threat modeling session will be done. We took 2 to 3 different sessions just to talk about thermostats and thermometers in fridges that were Wi-Fi connected. It's IoT stuff. And we had networking and infrastructure and GRC and other people in the room too. And sometimes I had GRC just sitting in there so they could understand the system, and then they could ask their own questions or get their evidence they needed. So it's really good. And as I mentioned, it also adds a lot of really great documentation to stuff. So let's talk about the basics of threat modeling here. You understand? Huh? Yeah. This is why I like Hitchhiker's guys. Got a lot of great quotes. They get people laughing. So data flow discussion, you're really just essentially identifying the assets and data flows. You really want to set your scope, and that's going to be important when you're having conversations, because people will try to go outside the scope. What you want to do with that then is say, hey, we'll set up another session, discuss this, or you can move it towards the end of the meeting, right? Again, if you're having a bunch of different people, it gets to be a very expensive meeting. You want to make sure that you're running this meeting efficiently. Then you want to establish a security profile. So what's in place? Do we have an MFA? Do we have HTTPS? Like everything you think that you can think of. Don't worry about being exactly exhaustive, because as you're attacking stuff, people will be like, oh yeah, we have this in place to mitigate this. So then you write that up on the board, right? And then you want to talk about identifying potential threats. And this is actually where silence is very, very important. Yep. People will talk. Because I know as I'm drawing it, I'm already like, I know how I'm going to attack this and all this other stuff. But if I come up with it, it doesn't help people, like I said, build that security mindset. because it is very interesting to see developers go from I've had them go, they started really getting into it. In fact, at one point they were like, wait, so since we're using an AD account, we can just have it connect to AD and then we can lock everybody out in the organization. I was like, yes, please don't. Developers are very creative, and when you get them thinking about it like an attacker, they can come up with some really creative attacks, but two, they can come up with some really creative solutions. So that's where silence is also really important, though, because people cannot stand silence, and someone will speak up. Now, if you have problems with doing that, sometimes people are missing the mark. Like they are trying like this. Oh, what if we have quantum computing to attack the encryption? And sure, you can talk about that, but you really want to get into some more practical things, right? One of my favorite things is bribing, right? And people, I'm like, what if I give you $1 million for your access to your account? And then I go do it, and they're like, you can't do. Oh, right. They start, and then there's precedence for this. Tesla had a Tesla engineer had a Russian national offer him $1 million to put malware on Tesla's environment. So it's out there. There are news stories out there happening. If you guys remember, there's also a lot of, and I imagine it's probably going to become more, corporate espionage, right? In 2017, the Astros had it came out that the Astros had their database hacked. And that was from a St. Louis Cardinals employee. And what happened there was that another St. Louis employee went to Houston to build out the same system that they had built at St. Louis. Well, they handed over their laptop and then also their credentials to log in. So this person went, I bet you could find their database and just pretty much guessed it, right? It wasn't the exact same, but they guessed it, got in, and they had access to all sorts of transaction information. That's a differentiator when you're talking about sports. If you know what your competition is doing from a very inside the ropes standpoint, like that's a game changer. So that's one of my favorite ones, right? And I love this XKCD slide because it doesn't have to be super complicated. Right, $5 wrench. Give me your password, right? Those are the types of things. But once you get past
social
that,
engineering is at its finest.
Yep.
Beat them until they tell you what you want to know.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Hey, how's it going? Welcome. So that essentially that gets the blood flowing a lot of times. And then from there, you want to assess your attacks, prioritize your risks, and then kind of document everything. And then from there, you're addressing your discovered threats, security vulnerabilities, and bugs. Again, documentation. A lot of times what I do is I send out meeting notes afterwards with action items. That's very important too, by the way. Having meeting notes with like action items and get a person. Like, you're going to do this, not a department, get a person. You're going to do this so that they can be followed up on. And then your meeting notes has everything that you discussed. This is another reason to stay silent too, by the way, is so you can take notes, because then you can, or try to have some, if you can have multiple take notes and then compare afterwards, it's really good. But now you've actually documented, here's the notes of how this application works. Here are the attacks we discussed, and here's how we mitigate them. So methodologies and approaches for threat modeling. So Stride, this was created in 1999, and I am horrible at names, but it's by Lauren Felder and Prared Garg, which is a very Hitchhiker's Guide name. Yeah, I am very terrible at names.
Can't run that through your ChatGPT?
I don't think it does. I don't think it does voice.
Yeah, it's gonna have to.
Yeah. That is something to test out. I'm going to test it out now. How do you pronounce this name? While at Microsoft. So this is what I started with, and this is how you go through your attacks too, right? Okay, what's a spoofing attack that we can do? What's a tampering attack? Repudiation it always got me. It involves an attacker performing an illicit operation or transaction in such a way that there's no proof of the action, denying their involvement, right? So that's logging, essentially. Like, there's no logging in place to identify what actually happened, right?
Yeah. Or like in IAM, it would be like, if you had system level privileges, you can act as the system. There's no repudiation to say it was me or it was me.
Yeah.
That's,
Mhm.
whether it's logged or not, if you find the log, oh, well, this server turned this server up.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. So, and yeah, some of the other stuff, I won't go into each one of these. And on the privacy side, there's a privacy framework, which I'll show you, has the opposite, right? It's non-repudiation. So that means that they aren't, again, the Google Analytics thing. Which, yeah, that's the next slide. So linkability, can you link stuff, identifiability, non-repudiation, detectability, disclosure of information, unworks, non-compliance. So this is a privacy-focused framework. So if you need to discuss privacy, LinDun is the way to do it. There are also, I will tell you, a lot of different methodologies and approaches. I don't cover absolutely everything because some of them are marketing pitches for like tooling and other stuff. And it's kind of like the XKCD. It's like we should have a standard that wraps up all of our standards. And now we have 15 competing standards, right? So Octave, this was developed by the Software Engineering Institute, SEI, follows a similar step-by-step process. The difference from this is it's more broader. Considers operational and business impact, so it's more like high-level strategic type stuff. And Stride kind of focuses more on the actual technical side of this stuff. So there's a methodology for everything. Attack trees. This is AI art, by the way. I suck at words, so but I left it because it's a Security Hitchhiker's Guide thing. But I have on my website, exploresec.com, attack-tree-example with this actual attack tree. So essentially you start at a higher level. It's like 3 different levels. Compromised app security, you're doing social engineering, exploiting software vulnerability, SQL injection, buffer overflow. I've never used attack trees, but it's, this might be a different thing that you want to use. Again, that website also has a breakdown of each one of the different levels there. So let's get into, for risk analysis, because again, like I said, some of these kind of overlap too with the risk analysis. Dread, this is what I use for threat modeling. This is what allows you to then rate the different attacks that you have. So when you're attacking it, you then mitigate it, and then you want to rate it, because then you're going to prioritize it. And so damage potential, reproducibility, exploitability, effective. And some of these, if you read Adam Shostak's book, he actually says this is obsolete. His book came out in 2016. I've used it past 2016, especially for introduction into threat modeling for people. Because what I like to do is do 1 to 3. They say often to do 1 to 10, but I like 1 to 3 because then you can do, is this high, medium, or low? And you're still going to get math out of this. You can do, because what you're going to do is you're going to give a number for each one of these. 3 being high, 1 being low. And if you get then you can identify, we actually need to mitigate this, a 15 over a 9, right? So it's a very simple, easy way to start getting into actually figuring out which one do you do first, right? Because you're going to talk about all this stuff. And while one might seem like it's more damaging, there might actually be one that's going to be more, much more possible. It's going to be a higher risk to the actual application or business process. What they do recommend is the SDL bug bar. That's what it stands for. At this point, they don't, it's a PDF online. I could not find anything, because I've never used the SDL bug bar. I've not found anything online that like gives a step-by-step for implementation. But there are templates available, so you can load this into your Microsoft tooling if you're using like Microsoft threat modeling tool, or if your entire Microsoft shop, even from a repository standpoint, you might want to use this. This is meant to be more scalable because it's set to level for bugs, right? It sets that level for getting past a certain level to move on to the next stage. Again, not something I've used. Again, it's supposed to be more context driven. Again, go pull up the spreadsheet. It's like it, and I couldn't find anything online where people have actually talked about how they implement it. So if people have implemented it, love to hear that. FAIR, this is another one. I keep finding new ones, by the way. Was created by Jack Jones. It's a risk management, who is a risk management executive in the cybersecurity space since 2001. It was developed to address limitations of qualitative risk assessments. It's meant to give you risk in financial terms. This is probably something more for, again, kind of your executive level. and helping them better understand stuff. This is something I'm diving into a little bit more, but again, I haven't used it, haven't spoken to it, but wanted to talk about some of the different methodologies and approaches that for your organization might be more beneficial.
How do you pick one?
Like I said, I started with Stride and Dread, right? Because those are pretty standard. There's a lot of stuff out there. They're simple to get into. And then if you, as you're using that, right? So I can't Stride and Dread everything in an application for an enterprise that's got, 10,000 applications. So at that point, I might need to look for something that's a little bit more scalable, like an SDL bug bar or maybe some sort of tooling. It kind of, again, it's just, you got to try, really, you just got to try it out and then see if it works for you or if you need to go find something else.
And to be honest with you, it's the standard is a framework to start from. So if you understand the way you walk through Stride with a system, you may do that a couple of times as an exercise just to teach yourself the process, and then deviate from that to something that is more organic and faster for your team. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because the value you're going to get out of it is the discussion around the system and the developers saying something and a sysadmin saying that's not how that's put together, or a security guy going, what if you do this? And the door falls off the hinges. Okay, well that's problematic.
You take all the bolts now, or the door to fall off.
I would assume it's also around execs, right?
Yeah.
Like you just said.
And
This is gonna go more for the execs. because
Yeah.
You're getting the same type of information that has to be translated.
I hope you never have an executive in a threat modeling meeting.
I hear you. I gotta be there though, right? You're talking-
So, yeah, some-
Security, right?
Well, yeah, if you're talking, again, if you go back to like Octave, which is more broader, you might have like different executives in. But if you have an executive in a meeting and you know they're showing up, like you might want to tell, especially if you're going through like Stride or Dread, you might be like, this is gonna be a waste of your time.
Right.
Unless they really, I know what you're talking about. Some executives do want to just be there regardless, but yeah. Yeah, well, and that might be where it's fair, right? Because it's more financial. Yes, yeah. Yep. So it just kind of depends. Again, digging in at the end, Adam Showstack's book is amazing. To me, it's like more of a companion guide reference point for you for going back and looking through some of this stuff. Terra was developed by the Department of Defense in 2010. So if you're working with Department of Defense, right, you might need to be using this to really speak with them. Again, plugging in and identifying what approach you want to take. Identifying, prioritizing, and addressing cyber threats and vulnerabilities within networks and systems. Uses a catalog of stored attack vectors and countermeasures. So they've already got their set of attacks that they want you to think about as part of the threat model, which might make it extra easier. Tools and resources. As I mentioned, whiteboard and markers. Probably still list up Discord too, really. So get started. So for example, I didn't use this tool at all. I know Adam used it a lot more than I did. Are you still using the Microsoft Threat Modeling tool?
I have abandoned it.
Okay.
So I didn't abandon it for any particular reason. It's got a ton of depth to it. If you want to spend some time, you can go through and build. It will automate the process of performing Stride on your threat models. If you provide enough metadata on all the pieces and components in your diagrams, like this is a SQL box, it's got this technology running on it, it will go through and automatically pop out the questions that you need to ask in the threat modeling process to go through Stride, and ignore things that you don't need to worry about for a SQL server that maybe aren't relevant for a web server. All of that is wonderful, but requires a ton of time and data entry to get to that point. And I found in our process that it was just too much minutia and fiddling, and we weren't getting that much out of it. So I have walked away from using this as a diagramming tool, and I'm now just using Draw.io, which there are stencils and templates for building threat models in Draw.io that are free.
That sounds really useful for large organizations that have kind of like a consistent setup that are, constantly iterating on their threat models, I guess.
Yeah, if it was more than just me putting the models together, it might make sense, especially if it was a team collaborating on mitigations and things that they had in the can. And I'm just, from a maturity standpoint, it doesn't make sense for my word. It's like,
Yep. Yeah, well, one of the great things about it, as you can see here, you can see as you make these connections and you click on them, they show you all the attacks that you could be thinking about.
yeah, you can go through and customize not only the boxes, and there's a bunch of different canned boxes in there for Microsoft systems, because this is a Microsoft tool. But yeah, you can set each one of those connection points as a human interaction or a SSL connection or SSH session. Like it goes into a lot of detail.
Yeah. So it's very deep, like you said. I think that's a really great description of it. So if you want to get really super deep in there, then and that might be where you mature to, like you were saying.
That, like, sounds great for us.
Yeah.
And I mean, we use Azure as well, so I wonder if you can just like import your Azure environment.
Yeah, one you can use the SDL bug box. I'm pretty sure you just put that template into like your Microsoft billing or.
One other thing I will say about this tool that I thought was really neat is that all of the data is saved in a Git-friendly format. So you change the model, it shows you the pieces that changed in a text. It's not super easy to follow, but if you're like looking at a model that's being updated,
It's a
it's
text
being
file.
committed, it's a text file, and you can follow like what got changed, and you see the XML entries that ultimately get rendered on screen.
Yeah.
Yep, and this again, I don't think I really talked about, but this is essentially what a threat model is, right? You're going back to kindergarten. You're just drawing lines and arrows and boxes and squares and circles. And I will say they have certain. I think I talk about that in a few slides, but there are certain standards. But you kind of what we talked about too is you pick your own, right? You want to pick your own way of identifying, but keep it consistent. Start Dragon. I have used this. It's an open source tool. It is, because it's open source and maintained that way, it can get a little bit wonky, but I've used this and in organizations, and some of the leadership is like, these look great, right? And it's just simple enough, but it does the same thing. It allows you to snap to stuff, and it gives you different things you can do. You can see here, you can put is encrypted protocol. You're able to document stuff a little bit more. I really just did some of these and just did screenshots. But I saved the actual threat model, so if I needed to go back in and change it, right, I could do that. That's another tool. Escalation of privilege, which I think Mr. Lang will remember. We did this game, I think, like at our second ever Colasec meeting. So this has been around a while, but this is meant to be a game where you pretty much throw out cards. So that could be another way to introduce people into threat modeling, is doing the actual game, because thinking about some of this stuff. Helps people get into that. I haven't used it a whole lot. Again, I've just stuck to the whiteboard, and I'm a big person in keeping it simple. But this could be another tool to use for that.
What game is
Yeah.
that?
Elevation of privilege.
Escalated privilege, isn't it?
No, it's elevation of privilege.
Escalated?
Yeah. I need to put a title on that. Elevation of privilege. I'm going to put the slide deck up too, and it'll have links and stuff on the website as well too. So,
But yeah, the game basically works. You throw up the model, and people have to play a card to talk through like how you would go about child service or whatever.
Yep.
On different pieces of the model, like you pick on the web front end or the SQL server or whatever.
all right. Yep. So now, all right. So we have a taskmaster, which is a kind of like a Jira Kanban for the demo. Stay Safe Booking, which is a hotel booking thing. And then I also have a health tracker. So which one do we want to model? Which one are you guys interested in? Well, it tracks people's heart rate, sleep patterns, and diet.
What were the options? Health tracker, what was the other one?
Hotel booking, or like a Jira board, taskmaster type thing.
I think obviously, I think the health one's
Okay.
more risky, right?
Well, to me, it doesn't matter. And now that you said that, I do want to do the taskmaster now because,
Why did you ask then?
well, because I was interested in what people are in, but like it's not about risk. Because what I want to show here is that you can do it for the simplest thing. I have pen tested an application, because we'll talk about it within the threat model. Is third-party apps coming into this, and we set up a third-party app between Jira and like a ServiceNow or a Workday, and I found SQL in the custom in-house built app, right? So you can have, and it's not, because again, I've talked about thermometers. That's not necessarily a huge risk, but I've spent several threat modeling sessions going through that to talk about it, because you can do this for a lot of different stuff, not just your most risky things. I mean, we can do the health tracker if you really want. I don't.
Too late now.
I'm sorry. I'm a jerk. So yeah, this is kind of the overview. I think people can see it online. I'm going to turn my monitor on too, so you guys can see. So you get a couple different angles, but got the whiteboard here. And this is fun too, when you have a hybrid situation with the threat model stuff. Is having people like remote, but some of the tools there too, right? Like Adam mentioned withdrawal.io. Oh, I'm putting it the wrong thing. Idiot. All right, yeah. So let's see, where are we gonna start here? This demo is also new for me, so I'm kind of winging it. Not practice this. I also like having different colors for different things. You can kind of pick whatever you want. It's nothing super standard, but designed for small, medium business teams to manage their tasks efficiently. This application will allow users to create, manage, and assign tasks, as well as set deadlines and priorities. It features user authentication, task creation, assignment updates, and dashboards, right? Key components: user interface, authentication services, task management service, database, notification service, admin. So we're thinking like that. And people, this is supposed to be interactive, so people shout out if you think I need to add something. But right, so you have you're gonna have your web server here where people are gonna be logging into to actually perform the actual task. And again, the threat model too can start at a high level, and then you can kind of dig into certain different features specifically. From here, I want to do like a high level. So you have your users here who log in to the web server. So task, I'm sure people can see that. Yeah. So you have your task there, and then it goes right to a database where it houses like all your tasks and other stuff, different things like that. What else do you think would be in here from like a high level overview, people logging in and using the actual task board? So let's say, yeah, let's actually say what happens here, right, is it goes to your SSO provider to log in, right? And then we can just remove that. So this would be the database. Like I mentioned, we could say it has like a third-party integration, right? So it's got this, and then we have a, we'll just say, I don't know, sync, we'll call it the sync app. And it connects to, oh, we also need boundaries too, by the way. This is where it's fun because you start drawing stuff and you're like, wait, I need it over here now.
Superior.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah, but this isn't a virtual meeting. So we're going to say it goes out to Workday. Right, so it pulls, and then it goes two ways, right?
Yeah,
So these go two ways. And then we want to draw a trust boundary. Usually green's a good one for trust boundary. So this is, I want to leave it open in case we have other stuff. What else do you think we could add in here? You think that's pretty good?
They have, this was a health app, I'm assuming they have.
Well, no, we're doing the task manager, sorry. Yeah.
What's this, the sync on the bottom?
Yeah.
What-
That's meant to be for like from Workday. So like you're taking tickets from Workday, loading it into your task manager, right? So sometimes you have like service desk people that use Jira and they want to pull it from like a Service Day or ServiceNow or Workday, and they want to pull those tickets in because they don't
So
like.
you have like some sort of
The library will close in 30 minutes.
Uh-oh.
If you're planning to check out items,
Yeah.
if you want to have a return
That's
library card,
seeking by
please visit
direction.
the checkout
Yes.
first level
The
of
help
this card.
desk and the.
All meeting.
Yeah, because sometimes like I've been in organizations where there's a battle over Jira and using like Workday, right?
So someone's
Please
job is
remember
to
to save
move
your work.
together.
Yeah, or you use an app to pull in the, so then they can update back to there without having to have developers with like two different,
Yeah.
or people in two different systems, right? Updating tickets. That's something I've always hated, was having to go to two different systems. But, and this is an app we actually built too, by the way. But I want to just throw out, there's other third-party stuff that's in there.
Thank you for visiting Richmond Library. We look forward to seeing you again.
So that's good. I think that's good, unless someone else had something else they wanted to add.
So there's no way the user's interacting through SSO to get to the application. That needs to be a triangle, not a.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you have to go to the server and then rewrite it and then come back.
Good call. Yeah. So now we build the security profile, right? So we talk about the different security things in place. So this is
How many
HTTP.
types of users do you have?
Oh, that's a good one. I didn't think about that. We also have an admin portal.
Is there a backup site?
Never.
So that would actually be one I wouldn't, I would say is not in scope for this, right? We're not talking about the backups. We could, well, I guess that is good to talk about. How do we back up stuff, right? That would be part of the security profile. I know I've gone all across the line, but
Are you doing synthetic transactions?
what do you mean?
Synthetic transactions to make sure that this is working.
Like synthetic monitoring.
You just have a synthetic account or a synthetic account that goes and performs this over and over again for latency. So if your SSO, right, I'm assuming it's zoned.
If anything goes down, your synthetic.
So it's almost monitoring.
I want to know if my latency changes. I'm a telemetry guy, so I'm always thinking like, I want to know if the SSO moves from here and suddenly I'm on the West Coast.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like just performance. Something's missing. If there's a low balancer in the background, it has a bad host and it's round robining, it's hitting that one and failing.
Yeah.
You have that intermittent performance issue. That's why we do synthetic transactions, because we're looking for, that's the worst problem. It's broken. When you check it, it's fine. It's broken. Check it, it's fine. Oh, wait, it did break. Now it's fine. That's how you find it.
So, and that would be like a separate thing internally too, is like, does that go to like a monitoring?
That I would collect that data, but I would still have somebody for robot.
Yeah.
Send it to the user.
Yeah.
Constantly testing.
The number of robot and service account systems that have been found through modeling, and like, how does this data get from this FTP server over to this application database? Oh, there's a robot that does that. Okay, cool. Why didn't we talk about that?
I mean,
It's the robot's touching how many records? All of them. Oh, excellent. Cool.
Yeah.
kind of important. Or they use the same robot to do all the tasks.
Uh-huh.
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
Right?
We have the service account for the application.
All the time.
Yeah.
No, and this is exactly what happens in the throw model, where you have this discussion here, right? Yeah.
Are we just talking about, like, that's a part of the system, so it goes in the model? Or are we talking about?
Yeah, no,
That's
if
a
you
part
have,
of the system, so it's something an attacker can attack.
Right.
So it's in the model.
Well-
Is that?
well, right, well, and we'll get to that, like, but we do want to discover, right? Again, this is SolarWinds right here. Say this is SolarWinds, and we have an on-prem task manager server, right? That's something that you want to call out. Anything connecting to this, you want to call that out, because you want to think about all the different types of attacks that can happen from that. Yeah. So yeah, actually, we can call this. Yeah, it actually is monitoring that, and it might be monitoring, or maybe it's not monitoring that sync, right? So
Which portions of your application are being logged to which systems?
Yep.
Like, if you've got an internal SOC that's monitoring an elastic stack, does that catch logs from all of your systems, or is it only looking at SSO? So after the SSO handoff, are you completely blind to what the user's doing, or do you have some of that data
Yeah.
on the back end?
all right. We've added more stuff. Again, this is also a threat model. You might start talking about what's the security profile. That's like, oh yeah, we have this in place. So
So Tim, I have one question.
Yeah.
So, as you brought in like SolarWinds or whatever as your monitoring piece, you could bring in like log4j, right? So how far is too far down the rabbit hole?
it's not, because again, you want to really rely on some of the stuff that's happening. This looks, sorry, I'm getting a little bit, I don't have time for this, but I'm doing it. So yeah, you definitely want to get into a lot of that different stuff. And we'll say we've built the profile, right? The security profile, unless someone else can think of something here. Really, because we're talking about outside users or MFA and up HTTPS, and then these are all, oh, this is a fun one too. This happens quite a bit for me. You absolutely want to talk about that, because I was actually going to change this model.
What about your developer that has a test account that bypasses this?
That could be discussed, right? Do we have all of our accounts accounted for? Because this should be the production, right? Do we have test accounts in production? Which is not necessarily a good thing, right? But here's the fun one too, right? I'm drawing HTTPS everywhere, and I'm just going to start doing this. But I'm going to say to the database, there is no HTTP.
So lucky enough to have a separate production network.
What do we think?
So the fun one is that I am not putting HTTPS on the connection between the web server and the database, because I've seen that a lot, right? Where they just have HTTP inputs. So I feel like we have a fairly good profile. Okay, how are you guys attacking this? You have an idea already, or?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
I'm always gonna start with social engineering. I
Yeah.
just need, look at there's some keywords, get the admins, executive admins.
Yep. Okay.
I'm good to go.
Yep. So I write these right on the board. SE, we'll say SE admin, which is actually a very prominent thing right now, especially when you're talking about like Okta, right? An attacker resets the admin account to get in. They're able to scrape data.
How many admin users do we have?
I don't know.
2 million.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
We'll say 20, or that might be hey, we need to go look into like how many admin users we have. Have we been shutting down accounts? So and really what I do is I just write down the attacks. I don't start fixing them right now. I want to talk about all the attacks. So how else would you attack this?
I mean, not just the admin, like you said, you could change a record number from a normal user and maybe get more information.
Okay. Yeah. So URL manipulation.
Well, but I mean, necessarily you would need to have a user first.
Yes.
So instead of, social engineering admin, but also social engineering users.
Well, but that could also be an insider person, right? If they find that they can manipulate the URL to get access to someone else's account or information, that is absolutely.
You should go about enforcing
Right.
roles.
Yeah.
And privileges, like.
Yep. No, absolutely. Let's do one more attack. And actually, here, I'm going to change the threat model here. All right. Say this is an Atlassian server right now. And I have just moved the trust boundary to it being on the internet.
What happens if SSO goes down?
No, sorry, I would keep this conversation going. There's a vulnerability out there actively being exploited on Atlassian server to compromise them. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, so that's a simple one, right? Oh, we got vulnerability, CDE, X, whatever, right? So, and I'm moving it along because we got to get out of here in about 20 minutes.
We actually got less time now. We have about 5 minutes left.
Okay, perfect. Not perfect. Anyways, then you would talk about mitigated controls, right? So the SE admin, we could do,
Maybe sessions.
Bastion hosts.
what did you say?
Sessions.
We're doing mitigation now.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so we're talking about how do we mitigate the social engineering of admins? Well, you can bypass MFA too, but yes, MFA would be one, but we already have MFA in place. We're talking about they get MFA too. Oh, like they
Limit the access for admin. So use Bastion hosts or something along those lines.
That'd be a good one. Bastion host. I mean, sometimes too, I'll tell you, it's just putting logging in place to see where people are going, because you might just have to respond to the incident. or do some sort of training for them, right? To me, training should be on the table as well too. So you write down your mitigation, URL manipulation. How do you mitigate that?
You randomize the record numbers, or you just get rid of them altogether and deal with it internally with your.
Or, yeah, you move it from a GET request to a POST request, or put some sort of authorization in place. But yeah, I like to randomize, say you can't do that, you got to use GET request, randomize permissions, and then CVE, right? We got to make sure we're passing. And then what we do here is we talk about dread, right? So I'm just going to move right up here at the top. Dread. So as far as SEN, what's the damage potential if they get the admin account? Would you say 1, 2, or 3? 3. Reproducibility. How reproducible is social engineering and admin?
How many employees do you have? We got to be one.
Right. I pulled 20 because that's how many admin users we have.
I still there. Pull that up. Yeah, reproducibility. This is where a discussion you can kind of, you guys will have a discussion. Reproducibility, how much you actually reproducing it. It's like a 1. How exploitable is it? Maybe we make it a 2. Affected users. Well, there's only 20, so 1, right? And then discoverability. How discoverable is it, right? That could be a 1, 2, 3. I'd probably put it like a 2.
I think it's be a 3. Like,
Okay, I'll give it a 3.
your admins are out there.
URL manipulation, right? URL manipulation, damage potential. What did you guys say for URL manipulation? So that's seeing someone else's profile or getting some other stuff. And this is also, again, health tracker versus like a task manager. You're gonna have a different damage potential, right? So this might be like a 1. Okay, they can see someone else's task. Reproducibility would be a 3. Again, I'd usually have these conversations with people. You can get into a lot of different, well, what about that? Exploitability would be
Very much like t-shirt sizing code.
yeah. Affected users would be a 3 because it'd be everybody. Discoverability would be a 3. The CVE, damage potential, well, it's in the news, so it's a 3 right now. Reproducibility, you think it's a 3? Okay. Exploitability, and exploitability to me is kind of like how easy is it to exploit, right? How can your average user do it, or does it require some sort of
Is this a
technical
back-end
knowledge?
component that only 4 people can touch, or is it?
Right. Yeah, exploitability for me, that's why I put URL enumeration, because someone just changes the number, right? It's super easy. Affected users, well, that would be maybe a 1 because it's just the development team. Discoverability, well, it's on the internet. It could be maybe a 2 or a 3. Yeah. And so 3, 1, 2, 4, 6, 7, 10. Are you just throwing numbers out?
Yeah, he is. He's absolutely trolling it.
Yeah. 13, 3, 3, 3, 9, 12. No, 11. So yeah, now you see like the social engineering admin, while that might be like that's actually lower than like our URL manipulation and CVE exploitation, right? So that's, again, dirty math. You can get more granular from the 1 to 10. But that's kind of what it is. And then all I do is take a picture of this, throw this up on some sort of documentation. Again, I've tried to take notes, or I have someone tap to take notes.
Post it on Twitter.
And then I post it on Twitter. Yes. That's like your normal trail, isn't it? Presenter view, make sure. Again, watch for scope creep. Evolving the threat model takes time. Just get started, right? That's what I love about Adam Show's textbook. Is just, it says after chapter 1, just start going doing it. You don't have to be perfect with it. It's meant to be like this, right? This gives you a lot of value because it gives people better understanding. What are all the things? We discovered new stuff as we were talking about it. Gets everybody into that security mindset. Remember, your threat model is not my threat model. So you kind of have to base it based on your organization.
I think that's one of my favorite tweets of all time.
Yeah.
Just for record.
Yeah. Resources for thirder. I run out of caffeine. I have a website, so I'm putting everything from talks and other stuff. I'm going to build that out, exploresec.com/threat model. I'll throw the slides up there. Again, this is probably considered the Hitchhiker's Guide to Threat Modeling, right? It's Adam Showstack's book. GitHub has a great, awesome threat modeling. It's very exhaustive.
15 minutes.
Get out. What happens if like we just stay here? Are they going to like just come in with coons and throw us out? Questions? I think we're going to go hang out other places after this. So if you have questions, hit me up. Sorry, online people.
Need some wings for us if you're going to transmission.
Yep, we're going to transmission. Thank you.